I'm Ross Snyder, and I'm a violinist in the Tesla Quartet.
Hi, I'm Edwin Kaplan, and I'm the violist of the Tesla Quartet.
And I'm Serafim Smigelskiy, and I'm a cellist in the Tesla Quartet.
And this is Michelle Lie, and I'm another violinist of the quartet.
So I know you've been around for about 10 years now, right?
Yes.
And you formed at the Juilliard School. Can you just give us a little background on how the quartet came together?
Sure. So as a graduate student, I made some friends when I arrived at Juilliard for my master's degree. And after the course of the first year, my three colleagues and I decided we wanted to try playing in a string quartet. We were just going to do it for chamber music credit, and it turned out after we were playing together for a few months that we felt a real chemistry, and we wanted to see if we could take the group farther. And this was actually with three other musicians at the time who have since gone on to pursue other activities in their musical careers. So after our first year, which was the year we finished at Juilliard, we moved to Boulder, Colorado to study with the Takash Quartet. And while we were there, Michelle joined the group. Michelle and I had actually known each other from a previous time. We were both students at the New England Conservatory a number of years before, and so she came on when we needed to have a new violinist in the group. So she joined in 2011, and for a few more years we played with the other original members, and then in 2013 and 14 we started looking for a new violist and cellist, and that's when we found Edwin and Serafim. And so for the last about 4.5 years, we've been playing in this configuration. We've been traveling a lot all over the world, and finally found the time to make our first CD.
Yeah. Well, I don't think people realize that quartets oftentimes are like rock bands. You know, they switch out personnel here and there.
That's true.
Yeah. Where does the name come from, Tesla Quartet?
So Nikola Tesla is, as our namesake, the famous scientist, inventor. And when we were coming up with a name for the quartet, we wanted something that was a little more unique and not necessarily artistically driven, but in a way I think we've found something that a name and an idea that resonates with the vision of the quartet. And Nikola Tesla, I think part of his genius was that he just devoted his talents to creating things that would bring communities closer together, if you look at it a little further back. And that's what we do as a string quartet, as musicians. We're tapping into some force, this emotional force that everybody feels, that everybody's connected to. And then when we perform, we're making those connections between ourselves and the audience and among the audience members. And it really feels like a network, and everybody feeds off of that. And I think there was a parallel with Tesla's work in generating power and transmitting it. And that's where the name came from, and that's kind of our vision as a quartet.
So you're not getting any funding from Elon Musk or anything like that?
Not yet, but maybe he's listening.
Maybe so. Well, you mentioned Nikola Tesla as your namesake, and he also has a sort of a sense of mystery about him and a little bit of danger as well. And I'm going to use that to sort of segue into the repertoire that you've chosen for this album. It's your debut album. Are you excited to release your debut album?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been looking forward to this.
Looking over the repertoire and listening to the recording, which is beautifully recorded and played, by the way,
Thank you.
You have a lot of Maurice Ravel, and you have your transcriptions, Ross, of these little pieces. And you also have a rather substantial string quartet by Joseph Haydn, who is really, the father of the string quartet. And then the odd man out, the little bit of danger there is heard in the music of Igor Stravinsky. So can you talk a little bit about these three composers, Ravel, Haydn, and Stravinsky, and why you chose to program this disc the way you did?
Well, I guess let's start with the dangerous one. Stravinsky, of course, is such an innovator, and he pushed the art form quite a bit. Again, the parallel with Tesla pushing the kind of scientific development. And it's a really edgy piece. So you gotta buckle up and listen to some crazy sounds coming from the quartet, and especially for those of the listeners who are perhaps not as familiar with the quartet, I think it might be a great introduction to what quartet can do, where they can hear something very classical and traditional in Haydn, and then almost kind of edgy and primal in the Stravinskys. Of course, most people, I guess, are familiar with, who are listening to classical music, are familiar with Rite of Spring and how it created this, big impact on the classical music world. And that work is definitely in that vein. And we had so much fun recording it. In fact, I just remember this little story. We were looking for a particular sound, and the microphones have a specific setup for Haydn and Ravel that was more kind of a warm sound, and we were looking for something a little edgier and something that will sound different from Haydn and something that will probably give a little different temperature. And we decided to mic it closely, basically putting microphones close to the instruments. And I remember when we finished recording it, we were about to record something else, and we realized, oh no, wait, we have to move the microphones back. And I thought it was just kind of a funny moment I remember from the recording.
Yeah. Well, listening to the recording of it, I can hear what you're talking about, and it seems like it's a really a difficult piece because you're all exposed, yet you have to play together so perfectly and perfectly well balanced. It really is a string quartet in the most basic sense of the word. Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about your transcriptions, Ross, and bringing Ravel into the mix? You sort of have these little bits of Ravel that tend to ground, the other music that we hear in the album, especially since you start with that wonderful Ravel string quartet, and we're already attuned to it. What does Ravel mean to you, and why did you bring in these little pieces?
Well, the Ravel quartet for me was the quartet from the first moment I heard it as a teenager. The first summer I went away for music camp, away from home by myself, practicing all day, meeting new musicians and making friends. And the Ravel quartet I heard for the first time, and it was one of those moments that just kind of blows your mind. And so that's when I decided I really wanted to pursue string quartets, if I could, as a profession, and it was a winding path to get there. So fast forward to our opportunity to record, and having played the Ravel quartet for a while now with the Tesla, we thought this would be a great opportunity to record it. But I was always disappointed that he only wrote one string quartet, because it is one of my favorite string quartets. And I've been, trying my hand at arranging things over the past few years when I have a little bit of downtime from the quartet, which is not that frequent, but I kind of looked through his piano repertoire to see if there was anything that I might be able to arrange, and I found first, actually, the minuet on Haydn's name, and I thought that was a nice way of linking some of the music on the album as kind of a tribute Ravel was paying to Haydn on the 100th anniversary of Haydn's death in 1909. So he was asked to write along with a lot of other French composers, asked to write a short piece with this particular musical motive that spells Haydn's name in notes. And it actually translated quite well for the quartet. And I thought, Ravel had written a handful of other minuets, either as parts of other suites or standalone works, and had even transcribed some of them himself from piano to orchestra. And so with that kind of framework in mind, that state of mind where the music isn't necessarily conceived solely for the piano, but exists in a way that any number of instruments might be able to interpret the music, I decided to keep looking. And so the Minuet Antique and his tiny little posthumous C-sharp minor minuet seemed like really nice contrasting and complementary examples. And the minuet is a staple of Haydn's string quartets from the beginning. I mean, if you look at Haydn's very first string quartets, there were 2 minuet movements in a 5-movement structure. So it gives you the sense of where the string quartet was coming from. And it was actually our producer, Andrew Keener, who suggested that we start with the Ravel and have the minuets then interspersed throughout the album. And I really like how it flows. It feels less like just chunks of music that exist on their own and kind of creates if not a narrative, at least some sort of path to follow through the ages, I think, for the quartet.
Well, it also kind of grounds everything for the ear. And people listening to this recording who may not be, really familiar with all the composers and all the backstory and what have you, certainly have something to sort of hang their ear on, when they listen to it. And it's a nice progression. I would definitely recommend it to anybody out there.
Well, thank you.
Just briefly, you mentioned that you worked with the Takács Quartet, and I noticed the sound of your quartet is very polished, but it has kind of a burnished sound to it. And I'm wondering, what did you learn from Takács that you've applied to your own work together as a quartet?
Yeah, we really enjoyed working with Takács Quartet, mainly because the way they approach the music is really based on the character and understanding and highlighting the character of the music. It's not really about making music perfect or playing together all necessarily together. I just really enjoyed working with them about showing the character at all time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's your debut album. It's coming out in September on Orchid Classics, music of Haydn, Ravel, and Stravinsky. I understand you've already got your next album in the works.
Yeah, it's actually in the can. We recorded this album of clarinet quintets with the amazing Alexander Fitterstein, and we're looking forward to releasing that sometime next year.
Great. Well, I look forward to that as well.
Thank you.
Tesla Quartet, violinists Ross Snyder, Michelle Lie, and violist Edwin Kaplan, cellist Serafim Smigelskiy. Thanks, guys, for joining us here on FM 91.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
having us.
Thank you.